Okay, you are being recorded, and we're going to be asking you some questions. Is that okay with
I
you?
consent to being recorded. Name's Charles Fogelman, Fogelman.
Perfect. Okay, so to start first, we have some stuff on like your background in global studies, and your background in teaching. So let
Just
her
want me to
rip.
talk about my background?
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right. I was born in Evanston in January of 1980. I lived in Evanston for a while. I lived in Glenview for a while. I spent most of the first 18 years of my life in the burbs. And then I went to college in Milwaukee at Marquette. And then I had a friend who was a year older than I who joined the Peace Corps in Bolivia. And I was getting a sociology and a history degree. So I didn't know what the hell I was going to do after undergrad. And he went to Bolivia in the Peace Corps. And I was like, oh, that's like a possibility. That's a thing people do. And so I decided to join the Peace Corps as well. And I went through all the process and got sent to a country to a country called Lesotho in southern Africa, and that sort of became this really meaningful thing throughout my life and career because I met my wife there because she was a volunteer with me, and I built my sort of research agenda there, and I've been doing research there for close to 20 years. I first moved to Lesotho. No kidding. The first time I met my wife was 22 years ago today. It's November 11th, 2003.
Whoa.
We went to Philly, and then the next, or 2 days later, flew to South Africa, drove to Lesotho. Um, yeah, so I first got to Lesotho just about 22 years ago, and I've been probably 7 or 8 times since doing research work on um, gender and development, probably defined specifically how like U.S. development interventions um, impact, especially like poor um, landholders, especially women in rural Lesotho. And what I found is that they're not always awesome for women smallholders of the
Yeah,
U.S. as they
yeah,
are.
we know a lot about that. That's like
Yeah,
literally
that's what
perfect.
that's what we've been
That's
talking
like
a lot about in our
our
Oh,
class.
cool.
entire class is based on like we had a union on like transnational workers and like how they're treated unfairly, and a lot of the times are like subject to like sexual harassment and like sexual abuse, things like that. So that's like, yeah,
Yeah, I
pretty
had a
perfect.
friend who was actually my research assistant for work that I did in 2014, and she had done her bachelor's in Soch, and her thesis project or whatever was going into the factories because there are a bunch of like textile factories in Lesotho, and interviewing workers and finding out about work conditions, and like the workers are 95% women, it's 95% men who own the factories, and like the exploitation, sexual and otherwise, is horrifying to hear about. And I think we don't always have to think about it or the ways that the T-shirt I'm wearing or the iPhone I'm using or whatever are
Yeah,
implicated in that.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, that like really
It's pretty on the
hit
dot
it.
on
Yeah.
what we're learning about. So how did you get into teaching from all of that? Like, where how did you like start going into teaching and like talking about stuff? You said you did research, like,
Yeah. I had a so after I finished Peace Corps, I moved to New York for about 5 years, and I worked in a cubicle, and it sucked. It
yeah.
was not my thing, and I also got a master's degree in history while I was there, um, and sort of started developing all these questions about Lesotho and about the fact that like it's been poor for a long time in very much the same ways, and there have been these same sort of messed up relationships between Lesotho and neighbors, Europeans and Americans and whatever. Um, so I was curious about why those kind of were continuing and what forces made them continue. And it so happened that I was about to get promoted in my terrible cubicle job to a level of payment that would have made me feel stuck. So I was like, oh shit, I gotta get out of here
Mm-hmm.
while the getting's good. So I rolled out of there to grad school in geography, and did research there, and then got hired here in global studies as teaching faculty. So I do a little research, but mostly my job is teaching. And when I was a Peace Corps volunteer, I was teaching seventh grade. I've sort of known, I was a camp counselor in the burbs when I was like 16 or something. I've known for a long time that like whatever teaching is, I have some sort of aptitude
Yeah.
for it. And I really like it. And like the more I've done it at different levels, the more I've been like, oh yeah, this is fun and this is something that
Yeah.
I get something out of.
Cool. Very cool. You want to take one?
Sure. Yeah. So, let me see here.
One over the background. You can ask like one of those two if you want. It doesn't really matter, honestly. The order doesn't matter.
Yeah. Um, let's see. So, how do you think like your like past like research and your past experience like in the Peace Corps and stuff, how do you think it's shaped the way you think about inequality? And then if you want to go ahead and like go into like how do you think it's like perceived the way you think about like race and gender too?
Yeah. Thanks. You know, when I joined the Peace Corps, it was 2003. I was getting sent to Southern Africa, and I knew that HIV/AIDS was just a massive issue then, and that was sort of part of what I found so compelling because I'd read a bunch about it in the newspaper, but didn't really know what it was like, and that was a big part of my curiosity going in. And then what struck me getting there was like how important it is to listen because like the Sutu there were like, yeah, AIDS is here and it sucks, but like that's not what we're thinking about in day-to-day lives or whatever. It was probably what queer communities were like in the early 80s or whatever, where like yeah, it's a reality, but there's still
Yeah.
life that goes on. um, the thing that I had to deal with the most that I wasn't prepared for was my whiteness because so much of my life I lived in Glenview for most of my life. There are a handful of Asian people there, and everybody else is white. So that's something where, because of the normativity of my whiteness and my masculinity, I didn't have to think about being white. And then all of a sudden, winding up in a place where my whiteness was a novelty, where everybody else was black, um, made me kind of confront it in ways that I think were helpful and useful. Um, just having to sit with that and think about it and think about the ways that whiteness is global, racialization sort of transcends borders, um, was instructive to me. Um, I don't know that I've reached any conclusions about it, but my kind of initial age 23, that's messed up feeling has continued for 22 years after that, I guess. Um, and then when it comes to gender, living in a different culture makes so much stuff that's typically invisible become visible. Like, in addition to not having to think about whiteness, I didn't have to think about masculinity either. But then there's everything is gendered in the U.S. or so much is gendered in the U.S. and so much is gendered in Lesotho too. But because it's novel, I looked at that and I saw that and I was like, oh, that's weird that there's this sort of separate work or this sphere for women and this one for men or whatever. But then, it's stuff like who cooks meat over fire? That's men's work. Who does
Mm-hmm.
all the other cooking? That's women's work. And it was like, oh, wait, that's the same as in America. And that kind of, I think, gave me the ability to get a little um, emotional and physical distance from the US and start to say, oh, some of the things that seem weird here are just weird because of novelty. The same weirdnesses exist, maybe with different
Mm-hmm.
dimensions to them in the US. So it allowed me to think um, about gender and about race in ways that they had, um, because of privilege, stayed invisible to me throughout my first 23 years of my life in the
Mhm.
US.
Would you say that it's more like the institutional like sector like there is like more gendered than it is here?
No, no, I mean, yes and no, I guess. Like the textile the factories, the places where clothes get made are 90+% women working there. and the handful of men are mostly in management jobs. Um, so it's more overt in that, but I think that the process is very much the same as in the US. You know, patriarchy is global, and
Yeah,
it functions different ways in different places, but at the end of the day, I think it's kind of the same shit,
more or less.
right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean that's what it like seems like from
Yeah.
the stuff that
Mhm.
we've discussed, like what you said, like we've talked about how like most of like the factory work, like in the past and like to this day, like in other countries, is like primarily women. So
And we were talking about like all over the world too, like not just
yeah,
like one
yeah,
specific region, because we were talking about like Mexico and then like India, like so it's not just like one place either where it's
yeah.
like that's happening.
Mhm.
Well, and I think this came up, Lucy, in the class that you took with me last year. That like I used the example in there of the Triangle Shirtwaist factory
Mhm.
fire, um, when like the people who worked in that factory were almost all women, were almost all Jews, were almost all immigrants, and like there's no clothing made in Greenwich Village anymore, but the exploitation's kind of the same if you're in Dhaka and you know Rana Plaza collapses on you. It's still mostly women. They still mostly have come from the villages, and they're still mostly working for you know Americans or Europeans or whatever to make our shitty clothes.
Mm.
We talked about like in our class how a lot of like if like any of the women like protested or like tried to like get better like treatment, or if they or if like something like that happened where like it was acknowledged that like the women weren't being treated well, um the companies would just like move to a different like country or like move, and like the same thing would keep happening. And so it was in like we watched this film, I think it was called
Bombshell. Oh,
Maquapas, I think was what it was called. And it was about the women in
Oh, and the
Mexico.
maquiladoras, yeah.
Yes,
yes,
uh-huh.
yeah.
Yeah, and they were talking about how like they like went to like the government and they were trying to like make a change, and like they wanted more pay. They wanted,
Like over a span of like years, like
Yeah.
mind you, like
and
fighting
they
for like a
still
very
never
long
got like their
time.
full stipend. They never like because the company just like left and moved. And so like they literally couldn't do anything about it.
I mean,
It's
that's what you can do. Workers in New York start making demands, so you're like, all right, screw you. We'll go to South Carolina where there aren't unions. And then people in South Carolina start making demands, and you're like, all right, we go to Honduras. And there's always somewhere with slightly shittier labor laws or somewhere where the workers haven't started making demands yet. And if all you have to do is kind of load your factory stuff on a boat and like find a warehouse shell, you can do that. And it sucks. Because when these processes are global and the governance structures over them are all local, you wind up just sort of shopping for countries that don't give a shit about human rights. When like they don't because they can't afford to, because then Nike says peace.
yeah.
Um, how do global systems continue to influence and strengthen racial and gender inequality in like today's like language, like in modern institutions?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, yeah, in fact, say it again.
How do global systems continue to influence or strengthen racial and gender inequality in modern institutions?
Yeah, and I wonder sort of how much like what directionality is, how much sort of racism causes inequalities and how much inequalities help to cause racism. I don't know. I think that like it's a meaningful question, but one of the great things about not great, one of the effective things about racial capitalism is how well it can kind of obscure itself and be like, no, that's not what you're seeing. What you're seeing is a natural kind of way that the world works. So it's a question that's a really good one, and it's a question that feels so unanswerable to me because we know that like racism is an engine of global inequality. We know that global inequality is an engine of racism, but like which causes which and like where the intervention point is. I don't know. Because all these things seem so predicated on difference existing. And like, when it comes to apparent ways to gauge difference, racialization and gendering are really effective ways to make differences apparent and say, all right, you're the underclass because you look like a whatever.
You look different than a white person.
Right, you're
Yeah.
not normative, whatever that normativity might be. And like, yeah, that's the other issue is like the global normativity is a white dude, despite the fact that we are a relatively small proportion of the world's population.
And there's always got to be someone on the bottom.
Yeah.
Like it.
Unfortunately, that's how it works. Like a lot of like we talk a lot also about like hierarchies and stuff of that nature, like
like racial hierarchies,
gendered hierarchies, like all stuff like that.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, and it's something that I wonder if you've talked about. I frame it more simply, but you might have a more nuanced way of framing it. Why J.K. Rowling is such an asshole, or something like that.
I wish we've talked about that. Okay. Like we haven't, but I wish we have.
Because it does seem like there's something hierarchical there, where like, second wave feminism won a lot of things for a certain type of especially white woman in the global north, and J.K. Rowling is completely one of those people. Those binaries worked like hell for her, for Hillary Clinton, for a handful of people. And you can see why you might jealously hang on to those binaries if like so much of your success has been predicated on them. You might be like, I'm gonna just go insane on X the Everything app and hate on trans people like fucking crazy.
Yeah. Which like I don't know. It just like blows my mind how like as a woman like that you like feel like that's okay. Like where did you get that? Like kind of like power, I guess. I don't really know. Like I don't know what else to call it other than like what she feels is power, quote unquote.
Yeah, and I mean, you frame it a specific way. Like this is something that, without getting too deep into it, there was a conversation between a Jewish student who has Israeli family and a Palestinian student in one of my classes the other day, and it was an uncomfortable conversation. And I was like, oh shit, I'm a referee now. But like, there are, and I have a whole Jewish side of my family that's very, very Zionist. And like, there are conversations that just can't happen there because the premises are so different. It's like, well, everybody would try to kill us just like in the 30s if the slightest bit of position were lost. And that then can be used to justify genocide. And I think similarly, you can build this kind of weird idea that like trans people, the ones that J.K. Rowling has sort of created as bugbears, are just like these men who are, I don't know, whatever the sort of story is. They're trying to get into women's bathrooms or whatever the hell, or they're trying to win NCAA swimming championship. Who cares? But like you
in
can make up the
actuality, they're
narrative.
like just trying to like exist and like live a normal life. Like
and like, doesn't J.K. Rowling know trans people?
I mean, I feel like all of the Harry Potter books have like, I mean, everyone likes Harry Potter, but like, I feel like an especially like niche group of people like really likes Harry Potter. Like, like I mean, I don't really know how to like
also,
phrase
like,
it, but
the people,
like know your audience maybe. Like
That's true, yeah, because it does feel like as far as people who super nerd out about Harry Potter, the trans community is like disproportionately or was disproportionately represented.
Yeah, and I mean, there's people online who have like put like people as their like quote unquote like headcanons like from her books as like a trans character like and it's like that like pisses her off like
they like switch the they've like made their own stories
like people do what they want and it's like how I just blows my mind like
there's a so she won some British award for an essay she wrote, I think for the BBC a few years ago, that was just a transphobic essay. But that's how Britain gives awards, I think. But there was like this one paragraph in the middle of it. It was like, you need, hey,
Any trash in here?
oh yeah,
Sure.
hey, thank you,
Yeah, no problem.
appreciate it. Oh, thanks, man.
Yep.
Um, there was one paragraph in there that was like, you know, back in the, I don't know, 1970s or 80s, if I knew that I had the opportunity to identify as a man, of course I would have done that. And it's like,
Which
do you
is
think you
like,
should maybe interrogate that a little bit and bring it up in
and
therapy?
everyone was
Because
just like
thank
blew
you.
past
Thanks.
it, like, oh yeah, that makes,
That's just
Mhm.
just a thing
yeah, I
anyone would
mean,
say.
yeah.
Mhm.
Which, yeah, I don't, yeah, she's something for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, I do think that, like, as you're saying, that kind of like difference is a thing where it's like it must be, especially when we have an economic system predicated on difference and predicated on inequality. There's something comfortable about being able to say, well, I'm not at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Those fuckers are at the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to
Yeah.
say, whoever they are, they're worse than I
Yeah.
am. And I think even if we know that it's a horrible inclination, we still need to eat. And like, that's the
Yeah.
thing.
Mhm.
I mean, unfortunately, it's like a natural, like, process that, like, seems to always put, like, white men at the top. At
Yeah.
least in the United States, like,
Yeah.
and then everyone else, like, falls below that, which we talked a lot also about, like, systems of oppression and how there's like different systems of oppression for like that will be placed like in the workplace, like whether gendered or racialized, like things of that nature. Like there's different like systems to it, and it kind of works like all of them can't exist like without feeding off of each other.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mhm.
I think that kind of goes hand in hand with like the whole hierarchy thing.
Yeah, I think yeah, you should read some Cedric Robinson. And I think this racial capitalism idea is a really meaningful one because it starts to seem natural. And one of the amazing things about capitalism is the way that it can sort of make itself through ideology seem natural. And it's
Yeah.
like, what? This is the way it's always been. This is the way it
Yeah.
always will be, world
Uh-huh.
without end, amen.
Mhm.
And like, it's only a couple hundred years old, but the hierarchies that it's exploited and then created have become these very durable things too. But like they
Mhm.
haven't been that way forever, and it hasn't been that way forever, and
Yeah.
it's gonna change at some point.
Yeah. It's hard to like think about things like I feel like now, like I was having a conversation with a friend the other day and he was taking more of a like idealist, I guess, perspective where I was taking a more realist perspective. Cuz I just feel like in this like time like it's kind of hard to not be like honestly like I don't think things are going to like change that much, and if they do change, like what does that look like in reality? What does change look like then? So
In my intro to global studies course, I go back and forth every year with should I do the climate change lecture this year or not? Because your generation, when I do the climate change lecture, the way that it manifests as either just like these sad people going, oh, fuck everything, or like just anxiety redoubling on itself.
yeah.
Because I think there's an easy pathway to nihilism and just be like, well, we're screwed, everything's done with. Um, and that's like got to be a massive task for your generation to not just throw up your hands and be like, we're screwed. Because
Yeah.
we're not, but it sure can seem that way.
Well, a lot of times too, I feel like going back to like this is like the way things have always been. Our education system, like you learn from like a young age, like gender roles. Like even I wrote an essay on this last year, um, like with toys, like even like in the
Yeah.
like early childhood classrooms, like
Uh-huh.
and like also through your parents too, but especially like at like you're at school 8 hours a day when you're younger, like okay, you all the boys over here, all the boys line up over here, all the girls line up over here, or it's like oh, the girls can play with the dolls and the
Yeah.
boys play with the tractors, and it's like um oh, like a boy's like doing something, he's so rowdy, like it's just because he's a boy, like that's
Yeah.
just like how boys are. Like they're just rowdy. Like, I used an example like if a boy like were to hit a girl like on accident or even if it were on purpose, oh, it's just because he's a rowdy boy. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's okay. Like he didn't mean to. And like, that's but those excuses like aren't made for girls. But then like I feel like we learn like as we grow up like, oh, this is just how it is. Like, boys are gonna be boys, and
And it carries, like that still
uh-huh.
carries on to like the workplace and
Yeah.
like we watched
Mm-hmm.
a movie called Bombshell.
It
It's
was
like
really good. I
Margot Robbie's in
recommend.
it. Who else? Kate
Um,
McKinnon is in it.
uh,
Okay.
Um,
it's
it's
about like
like
the whole
Fox
Fox News
News. Yeah.
scandal.
Oh, it's the Megyn Kelly movie. Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really good. But yeah, even those like things that you learn, they're just like ingrained in your brain whenever you're younger. Like
Mm-hmm.
that, like, and for a woman, like in the workplace, you're like, oh, like I need to do like whatever. Like I
Mm-hmm.
just need to follow like the men and do what they do and try to be like. You almost try to fit yourself into this mold of like,
What they want you to be.
yes,
But then it all sort of falls apart when one of those men who's invited you into the boardroom or whatever is like, "Hey, great ass" or something. And it's like,
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
fuck you, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Two things. One is that during the sort of heights of the Me Too moment, my wife said something that I still think is meaningful, which was that I think at the end of this, there might not be any men left, which is like legit. But then the other thing is to the gender roles in youth thing. My younger kid, who turns 9 next week, has in the last year, they're very precocious, has started using they them pronouns and become a vegetarian.
mm-hmm.
So I was
That's
expecting that to happen at
awesome.
like 12 or
Like,
13, but
yeah.
like 8, go up.
Yes.
But like they're also stubborn and dogmatic. So like the PE teacher is like, all right, boys can go line up and get a drink. Girls,
Mm-hmm.
and at the end they're just sitting with their hands on their hips, and he's like, oh fuck. Or like, but then there's all this anxiety about what bathroom to use and that, and you just see the ways that like um, those roles get imprinted and then reinscribed and reinscribed and reinscribed, and if you don't fit, you're taught that you're a problem from
Yeah.
very early.
Yeah, I in one of my like other papers for this class we had to do like interviews, and the person that I talked to, she was saying that like she was talking about how um there'd been a situation where like a teacher had yelled at her, and um or like if like a student, like she's black, so like if a student, like someone said like the N word to her like in the hallway,
Mm-hmm.
and she like tried to do something about it, she was always seen as outspoken.
Mm-hmm.
So anyone who like is not like this mold of like
Yeah.
how our society has deemed people to be or whatever, you're seen as outspoken. And even your child probably feels that way a little bit because I mean,
these trans people are so annoying. These
yeah.
non-binary people are so
You
fucking
know,
annoying
like-
because they're always not doing what my sort of
and it's
preconceived
also
notions.
being like left out too. Like
Yeah.
that's like nobody should have to feel that way. And like it's like a whole like mental health thing too. Like then like self-worth and like okay, I'm not enough because I don't feel the same way as other people do, and that sort of thing. And I think that transcribes as like that, like as you get older, then it's just like it's hard to
It still stays like a difficult topic to handle. Like, we talked a lot about how like during the pandemic, like a lot of like people like non-binary or trans people took that time to like have surgeries that they've been wanting to get, or like felt really like a lot more comfortable being on a screen than in their own home than being like in the workplace and having to like conform to like the quote unquote like office like standard, like what those people want to see. Like, I mean, I'm sure a lot of those people like don't know too much about like what like rights trans and non-binary people like should have and like all that, like what makes them comfortable, like so yeah, that was like interesting to talk about.
Like job applications too. Like there's so much, like we talked about we read something and it was talking about names. So like I forget exactly what the like statistic is, but people who have like a I don't know if this would be the exact like correct term to like use, but like a black sounding name
Mhm.
are so much less likely to get hired. And it's like, okay, am I
It was
just
like a big difference.
are you
too,
just not
like,
supposed to put your name on the
Uh-huh.
application?
or even like their
Like,
pronouns?
how are you
like
supposed to
people
have
who, like,
opportunities
yeah.
to work your way up
Uh-huh.
and try to have a steady, like, what's considered like a good and steady job and like, hey, like, provide for your family or like, you know,
Mhm.
even like provide for yourself and like do these things whenever there's no opportunities
Presented.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the racial coding thing does make me think there was a school board election in Champaign in, I don't know, February or April or something. And one of the big items that school board candidates were sort of flexing on was that they thought that the superintendent should be fired. And there was good reason for that. Um, but the superintendent was a black woman. And it was just very interesting to watch these mostly white, I think mostly male, candidates, the way that they talked about it and the varying degrees of fucked upness to it, where it was
Mhm.
like you're not quite saying uppity, but you're getting awfully
Yeah,
close to
yeah.
saying
it's
something like
all
that, man.
it's so like it all like rides that
It
line.
does.
And it's so like condescending. I know like I kind of had a similar situation in my hometown. Um well like not like kind of similar in like the like way that like it was white men and it was gross, but um the school board was throwing a fit about like our dress code and what the girl volleyball players were wearing. And it was just like what they were saying is just like, why are you sexualizing us?
Yeah.
Stop looking at 17-year-olds butts, dude.
Like
Yeah.
why? Like okay, like this is you. This is a you problem, not a
Yeah.
me problem.
Yeah.
I can't help the way my body looks. Like
Mhm.
sorry that like
Yeah.
you know my body looks different than like someone who maybe hasn't gone through puberty like, yet. Like it just is different. Like it's not like it doesn't have to be this whole big
Yeah.
like thing, and it's just gross.
Well,
But like it's so normalized for us to just be like, oh, like that's like
Like cover
it's
up.
like yeah, it's like
yeah.
normalized for them to like do that.
Yeah.
like for an old dude to be like, you know what? I'm finding 16-year-old girls hot, and they're the problem. It's like,
Yeah.
no, dude, I don't think that's what's
Uh-huh,
happening here. That
yeah.
seems like a you issue, or at least saying it out loud is a you issue.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, there a few years ago, the University of Illinois became the last of 18 universities in the Big Ten to build in a policy about faculty undergraduate romantic relationships, meaning sexual. And it was I was on the faculty senate when we were discussing this, and the number of old men who were telling
Yeah, I
themselves,
think I remember you
I'm sure I
saying
said
this.
something about it, where like somebody, this was during the Zoom moment, so we were on the interwebs, but like some old guy who looked not like a person that college age people would find sexually appealing would unmute himself and be like, "What happens if a 19-year-old just finds me so appealing?" And it's like, dude,
And
No!
no
Shut
one's
up.
gonna
this
think
shit
that.
is you.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah. So I do think that like, yeah, those questions of like, yeah, race and gender and sexuality mixed together are such sort of fraught, heavy things, and like what, I do think there's a bigger utility to sometimes saying to the guy who's like, these 16-year-old volleyball players are so hot, I can't stop staring at them or whatever. You're gross, shut the hell up.
Mhm.
Even if he continues to believe that and ogle from the sidelines or whatever, it's useful to say, you stop it,
Mhm.
because that sanction does do some legitimate work.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
hope.
Yeah. It's just like but I feel like we are so like I don't like it's just like it's so like everything in our society I feel like not everything but so many things are just blamed on like oh that like that's just how it is like that's just
Mhm.
how he's gonna be like that's just
Yeah.
old men. I
Right.
remember like I worked at a pizza restaurant in high school, and I had like as a server, like a waitress, and I went over one time to like I was doing my table and I was like oh, like, do you guys want a box for food? Like, are you done with it? And the guy, like, the old man patted down the seat and said, "Oh, well, why don't you just finish it for me?" And I'm like, come on. But we'll be like, it's like we don't, in those situations, it's like, what do you do?
Mhm.
Because of that, like, power that men hold over, like, us. It's like, what, how would I even go about, like, that situation and being like, okay, this is not okay. This isn't okay for you to say. And it's like, how, and there's not, like, more, like, I don't even know, like, what, like,
I mean, because you think about it, it's like how many other people has he said that to? Like,
yeah, and
whether like in like a
we're just
social
dealing with
setting
it,
or like,
It's like I could tell
But
my manager, but my manager's also a white male.
and probably always in a setting like that because you can't do anything, and
Mm-hmm.
that's part of what's being exploited there. Because it's the sort of old story about sexual harassment or assault that it's a power thing rather than a sexual
mm,
thing, and that is like so much like I'm going to make you uncomfortable in a way that like shows my position and also shows yours,
Mm-hmm.
and you have the choice of doing something about it and getting stiffed on the tip or getting yelled at or your manager getting told or whatever, or you have the option of this like grinning and bearing it and saying um, and then sort of losing a little tiny bit of yourself in doing
Mm-hmm.
that, which sucks to have to make that choice, but that's a choice that's really exploitable by dudes in that position. And I gotta say that like as a rapidly aging white man, I do think that like um I don't think I'm a creep. I'm sure he doesn't think he's a creep either. But I do think there are situations where you have to like think about yourself and remember that like, when I was like an adorable flirting guy when I was 25 or something, I'm a very different person now. And I think that like this is one of the things that the normativity of whiteness and masculinity can do
mhm.
because we don't think about our gender, we don't think about our race, we don't think about our age. We just think of ourselves as normative and so desirable and good. And like, yeah, she must want to,
Well, yeah,
sit
that
down
guy
and have some
probably
pizza
didn't
with
think
me.
he was doing anything
Uh-huh.
wrong.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
And if you asked him about it afterwards, he would be like, I don't remember saying
uh
that
huh.
even, which
Mm-hmm.
makes it
Which
kind of
what they
creepier.
talked about, that was like the whole premise of this movie we watched. That like, it was this like CEO of Fox, right?
Yeah, Roger
Yeah,
And
Reynolds, right?
Rogers.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
so um, and basically like all of the women in the office like either like were had like something happen with him, like a like sexual interaction with him, like him doing it, like, or like they were all like had to wear like short dresses and like short skirts, and he was like, pull up your skirt, like, all, and it was like more of like a power thing than anything, like, because
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, look at me, like, I'm this old white dude, a
Mm-hmm.
CEO, like, I have so much power over you. If you don't
Yeah.
do this, like, you're never
Uh-huh.
gonna have a career
Yeah.
as like a news anchor
It's like,
or
and like they had them like do that so that way they could get a promotion.
mm-hmm.
Like they like before that they like I don't know exactly what their job was, but they were like lower and then like you would go to him and then get your promotion.
Basically to get their own show, like
Yeah.
on the
Right.
like
Mm-hmm.
network or whatever. And I
Yeah.
mean, after the fact, he was like, "I didn't do anything wrong." Like he was like trying to fight it. Like I mean,
Uh-huh.
whether
And
that
they
was
gave him
honest
a
or
$65 million settlement. And
Oh,
they only
I'm
gave
so glad he won't go hungry, isn't
and
that?
they only say and they only gave the victims there's like I don't know
it
how
was like a
many
stat, but they gave them like less than they gave
they give
him.
them only 50 million, but that's like
It's
Yeah,
really on the nose, isn't it? Not
mm-hmm.
just
Yeah.
it's bizarre.
I was like, oh my god, like
yeah.
yeah.
And I know, and I try to encourage these whenever possible, but like there have to be whisper networks among students, like don't be in the office alone with whomever, or don't take a
Mm-hmm.
class from the person who's a creep or something. Um, there was a new for I think an engineering department. There was a search for a new head a couple years ago, and I was talking to a couple of the graduate students in that department, and One of them said there was a man who, in his job talk in the Q&A or whatever, said that he hated gossip. And one of the things he was going to make sure didn't happen in the department he ran was gossip. And she was just talking to me about it. She was like, gossip's a really useful thing because gossip is like, hey, this guy is a creep and like don't be in the office with him or something. And when you say you don't like gossip, which is an incredibly gendered word, you're shutting down a very specific communication channel. And it wasn't something I thought about before, but like hearing that, like, oh yeah, that's useful. And
Yeah.
like, I mean, the Roger Ailes thing is beyond that because it's so overt, I think, but it still is that same mechanism where like there's not punishment for men being creeps.
How, like, do you have any ideas on how maybe there could be like punishment or like more awareness or like
Even more structure, like
Yeah, I mean, I think that like a sort of default reaction of believing survivors and victims is something that like gets done rhetorically but doesn't really get done in practice. Like I hope that you've never had to and won't ever have to deal with the Title IX office here, but like the Title IX office is great at insulating the university from stuff. But if there's ever a point where like survivors' interests and the university's interests diverge, survivors get thrown under the bus in a second. And I think that's the problem. Like HR departments, institutional things like Title IX exist to insulate and protect institutions. They don't exist to protect survivors or victims. And I think that like ways that like somebody who is harassed or assaulted doesn't have to expect that like some lawyer or someone's going to be like, what are you wearing? Or like, well, have you slept with a person before? You know, all this sort of creepy shit that comes out where like there's going to be some offensive exercise that gets attached to it. But I don't know how that happens. I mean, I think that like good allyship is a nice starting point, but it seems really tepid ultimately. I don't know. You guys got any ideas?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to like think about because like I said, like it's hard to think about things that like don't seem like there's ever going to be a cap on it. And I feel like this is one of those things that it's like Lucy said, like it's one of those things like, oh, they're just being boys, like boys will be boys. Like and it just carries on like into like workplaces and like bigger, like higher up like positions and I I mean, it's hard to think about a potential like solution for it when it doesn't seem plausible or reachable, yeah, whatever you want to call it.
I feel like, I mean, you can always say like in companies do more training, like do more, you know, but it's like, okay, how many people are actually like listening to this? How many people actually like care? Like
the
I know like
policies are
there's
there. I mean, like Title IX is there. Like all those titles are here. Like
I mean, I know like if you get like if you're like in like a finance company or whatever where that's primarily like white men and you're talking about you know
You're not going to be a creep to women in a finance company because there aren't any women there. I think is probably
Yeah.
an insulation of sorts.
yeah.
but, like do like this training and they're sitting there and they're just like, oh, like
I mean, we all have to do training.
Well,
It's required.
people like complain about like the FICARE stuff. Like I know I've like talked to so many guys who are just like, oh, like this dumb FICARE training. Like I can't believe I have to go to that. Like I already know all this stuff. It's like
It's
okay,
like, do you though?
but
Could
like,
you try living it in addition to knowing
right?
it?
I feel like also people, well, men almost get offended by like those sorts of
Oh
trainings.
yeah, I'm one of the good ones. That's always the undercurrent there, right?
Yeah,
And it's
like they get
it's fine.
offended because like people get so defensive and there's no accountability. And it's just like, okay, like, but how do you even go about like changing that?
like the policies are in place. Like, how many students like do like I mean we all have to do it, not how many. We all have to do the sexual harassment training each like year, I think. It's either each year, each semester, like it's a graduation requirement. I
Yeah.
mean, and how many like weekends do we get? Like I mean, I get all of the like
The Illini
At
alerts.
a fraternity
Yes.
house. Yep.
Mhm.
at like Saturday night at like 3 a.m. like blah 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 blah, and it's like okay, like this is in place, but nothing is like it's not working. So
And that's what gets reported too. And I think the underreporting is a pretty horrifying thing.
yeah,
You know, I'm sure this trauma got brought up to you in class, Lucy, but there's also faculty and staff sexual harassment training, which any reasonable faculty and staff sexual harassment training would be like, don't sexually harass students.
Yeah.
But that's not what it is. There's a whole question on there that's repeated multiple years now that's like, it's a case. And like, what do you do in this case? You see your student out at a bar. And it's like, number one, absolutely not. If I see one of my students out at a bar, I am at the wrong establishment. But she seems drunk and is with some guy you don't recognize, and tells you that she's going home with him. What do you do? And like, there are three possibilities. The only reasonable correct answer, which they say is the wrong answer, is the first one, wherein you say, nice, which is weird, but nice, have a good weekend, and I'll see you in class on Tuesday. Which, like, yeah, that's the other one. Second one is like, I don't think that's such a good idea. But
That's
you
still
do what
like
you want to
holding.
do, which is just shaming.
Yeah.
There's no actual intervention.
Yeah.
And then the third one is like, I don't think you're in any position to consent to sex right now. Why don't I help you get in a cab and you can get his number or something? And it's just like, what the fuck? Because number one, what it presumes is that the guy in question is the creep and not me in this situation. And why the fuck am I not the creep? And second,
And that's also like kind of like it still like is almost like a power thing like too. Like, oh, I don't think that like it's kind of like sounds like
you're her dad.
you're wanting to take her home almost,
Like-
or it's like, oh, I'm gonna get you a cab and make sure you get home okay.
Like it portrays them as like the hero.
right, I'm
almost.
supposed to police my
Yeah.
student's sexuality, where it's like, no, I'm not. You're adults. I don't give a shit. Do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And it was just a really weird thing, but like, it's jarring to see that in the faculty and staff training when we know how pervasive faculty and staff being cretins to students is. And that doesn't get addressed at all. So I think those trainings are part of the problem because number one, we all just click through them as fast as we can.
Yeah.
I did it in 27 minutes. It's supposed to take an hour.
I did it in less than that.
Yeah.
You just hit the
You,
closed
like you played in the
thing.
background, just like something you're doing something else. Like
The worst is it knows when you switch tabs, but that's a different story. Yeah. Yeah, so like if you really do think it's meaningful, sit people in a room and like intervene with them and say, "Hey, here's what you
It
need
needs
to
to
do."
be like a class, like.
But even like that's a thing. The FICARE is
Yeah,
a thing.
FICARE is a
Like,
thing.
Yeah,
for
that's
students.
true.
Yes.
I mean,
It's so interesting, like, just like thinking about it from like, I don't know, like a mental and like brain perspective. Like, why do we dread like those trainings? Like, why do we like hate like
even
what?
I don't like to do it.
Right?
Like,
It's
I
like,
mean, who does?
oh my gosh, like this is 2 hours out of my day that I have to go do this. Like, I have so many other things I could be doing. Like, it's like this is important. So how do like why do we dread it so like why are we not like wait, like yes, this is something like I need to go to, like this is something that's really important. Like
Yeah.
the way we perceive like it's like yes, you don't want like any of these things to be happening to anyone. Like this is all terrible, but it's like okay. Like it doesn't become real until it happens to you.
Yeah, right.
Well, and by having it be the hour or whatever online training that the university bought from a vendor, the university is demonstrating we don't care. We're
Yeah.
just ticking a box that we have to tick.
right.
This is not a big deal to us. It sucks.
I mean, you would never catch like, I mean, not to like generalize like frat guys, because like there is like good frat guys out there, but most of the time there's like when you get the Illini alerts, it's like at a frat house at like whatever, like 3 a.m., right? And I just like, I think that it would seriously be beneficial for like that group of individuals to have to take like a class like race and gender, race and ethnicity, like something like that. But I mean, that's never gonna be the case. Like, I mean, a lot of them are like in like, I mean, I guess business majors, like working to be in that cubicle, like, but it just like, I seriously feel like, because our class is like 90% girls, like, you know what I mean? Or not girls, but like females or like non-binary individuals. Like, there's only a handful of like guys. So
Yeah.
it just is like,
But also, I feel like, not like, I'm not like defending this at all, but I feel like because like the fraternities are like organizations, that's why it's like I'm not saying that's not happening. Like I feel like it's reported there more because it's an organization, whereas there probably is a lot more
yeah,
happening, but people just don't report it because it's like individual, and it's like, okay, well, like
yeah.
you understand what I'm saying?
Well,
Kind of.
there's always gray area in an instance of sexual assault, and like there's less ambiguity and more inclination to believe people, I think, when it's a frat house, because like, oh yeah, that's what actually happens, right?
Right.
You know? Whereas
Yeah,
you
there's
had
like
too
a
much to drink,
stereotype.
it was in your dorm room, you invited somebody home or whatever, and then like maybe the gray area was a little different.
It's interesting that that is like yes, there's always gray area, but I feel like in like cases that I've seen it, like it's always the gray area is like kind of on the girl. Like, were you drinking? What were you wearing?
Always,
Like,
yes.
so I think that's
And that's how it gets utilized too. Like it's usually clear cut that it was assault, but the gray area is such that you can say, "Oh, so you consented to this much, but then you sort of withdrew it. How did you?" And it's like,
yeah,
stop
Even
it,
in
come
your
on.
training that you were talking about, it was a girl that like it was in the example.
I'm not supposed to believe men's sexuality. I'm supposed to believe women's sexuality. Yeah, pretty clear.
When you were talking about like this was like a while ago, but you were talking about climate change, like
Yeah.
talking about how like if or not you should give that like discussion,
Yeah.
I guess. Is there like other ways that you've tried to bring in like marginalized perspectives into your class?
Yeah, I mean, I think syllabus construction is really important for that because it's so easy to make a syllabus of mostly white, mostly men from mostly the U.S. and Western Europe, and it's a lot of work to make a syllabus that has other people in it. And I think I'm decently attuned to that, and I try to sort of have um, a lot of voices on a syllabus, but
It's hard.
I don't know how well it works.
Yeah.
I don't know how well I do.
There's so many different groups, like it's hard to get like all of their voices into like one semester. Like that makes sense.
And it's hard to not have it feel like tokenism sometimes. So I do try to do that. Yeah, the best that I can do, I think, is be as aware as possible of my positionality and my biases, and try to be as like sort of candid and forthright as possible with students. And I think one of the luxuries of teaching in the social sciences is like saying that I don't know, I'm making an argument. I see the world this way, but I could be full of shit on a lot of stuff.
Right.
So you need to sort of bring your own
perspectives. Yeah. And then you were talking also like you brought up like the Me Too movement. Like do movements like that like show themselves in like different countries? Like do they cross borders?
Yes, I think so. Uh, with the caveat being that the only places that I know anything about are North America and Southern Africa.
That's okay. Like anything like cross borders, like how do they like show
There
themselves?
definitely was a way that. So two things. Number one, I think Me Too has been mobilized quite a bit in Southern Africa. I think there's a way that maybe not with the same hashtag or language, but there's a way that like um, horrible men have been cracked down on and have been shamed and have been pushed out of positions of power a lot over the last 7 years or so. Also, though, there's the reverse, the sort of beginning of the um, kind of decolonization of education moment when it hit the mainstream was very much a Southern African movement, and it started with like the Rhodes Must Fall thing at the University of Cape Town, where a statue of Cecil Rhodes, the um,
Oh, I remember you talking about.
the miserable Brit who was a big important guy who became the prime minister of the Cape Colony for a while, who had Rhodesia, North and South, named after him, who endowed the Rhodes Scholarship, who founded De Beers. He had a big statue of him right in the middle of the beautiful University of Cape Town campus. And because he'd given the land
Yeah.
to build the university there. But like he died in 1903, so like 250 years after the first white settlers arrived at the Cape.
Yeah.
The amount of violence that had to happen for that to be his land to give to somebody
Yeah.
2.5 centuries later is pretty apparent, I think. So the movement was Rhodes Must Fall, and was like, the University of Cape Town's a colonial institution, and we need to remove this statue. And the statue did eventually get removed. And it sort of was a part and parcel of the broader like Confederate statue or Columbus statues in the US thing, of Cecil Rhodes statues at Oxford, and a bigger conversation about decolonization of education. So I think that like, what start as hashtags do go other places and do travel in cool ways. And I think that's not just from north to south. I think it's the opposite direction as well.
Yeah. Do you like? I like took another class and it like talked about how like globalization how we always hear like the developed countries are helping like the developing or like like with even like colonization like Cecil Rhodes. How do you think like when it comes to like culture or even like in the sense of like these big institutions moving to these like countries where it's like, oh yeah, like we're providing jobs for like these women and but like how do you think like that like hurts like that country's like culture? Like how do you think like they're every like people say they're being helped, but like
Are they?
Or are they not? I mean, it sucks because the name of the game for everywhere except like, I don't know, North Korea and Cuba at this point is American style capitalism. And like since the Reagan Revolution of 1981, American capitalism has extended its tentacles into every single corner of the globe. So like it's true, right? That it's good because it's helping poor countries be more competitive in a completely rigged game. So how does it screw with culture? I don't know. I don't know what culture is. I'm scared of anthropologists. But I do think that like it changes relationships and makes a sort of clientelist relationship between rich and poor, and it's kind of a neo-colonial relationship. I mean, colonialism didn't die; it just sort of turned into a new form. So I don't know about the cultural aspect, but like the sort of economic and political aspect is pretty clear.
Yeah.
Also, I'm going to kick your asses out in like 2 minutes because I do it at 11 o'clock.
That's okay.
That's fine.
Should we ask one like a solution? You already talked a little bit about like having awareness and how that's like kind of the most important thing you can do, which I mean, if there's no solution, like what you can do is have awareness. Like I do think that's very important.
I will say I feel like just like from someone who's gonna be a teacher, I feel like there needs to be more done at a younger age for like teaching like and making like students like more aware or like we like have these like gender roles like at such a young age or like those sorts of things and it's like I actually talked to Evie's mom about this because she's a principal but like instead of lining students up like boys boys go first and then girls like line them up by like the color of their shirts or like and I know like that's not like a huge like big solution but even like little things like that I think could like make change in the way we like perceive ourselves and like our place of like okay like I'm a girl like I'm straight but I don't have to be like this super girly girl, I love pink, type of person.
And kids do have like a really clear sense of justice. You know,
Yeah.
it's not
Mhm.
fair is the thing that kids say more than anything else.
Yeah.
And I just have this distinct memory of my elder kid, I think in first grade, just saying to me, "Hey, Dad, how come we have Columbus Day?" When obviously she had just learned that day when Columbus, after arriving um,
Yeah.
on Hispaniola, took 10 men and 10 women as slaves. And I was like, it's a really good question, isn't it?
I mean,
But like
yeah.
that's a 6-year-old who's like, wait, this is
Uh-huh.
fucked. And like if a
But then
6-year-old
we just
recognizing
deny
that,
those questions in the classroom, and that's the problem.
right. Well, because you're gonna get fired from
Yeah.
the school
right.
districts at this point if you lean into that. Which is, I mean, maybe a different thing to consider is like education can get overstated as the cure to all ills. But like education is a really meaningful thing. And when you deprofessionalize teaching, when you try to crush teachers' unions, and when you say you're going to get fired if you acknowledge that trans people exist, if you don't,
Nobody wants to be a teacher anymore because it's just like
because it's
not
entirely
fair.
possible that some insane school board election means that you have to teach Noah's Ark as history or something. And,
Yeah.
like, that's a lot.
Bizarre.
Yeah. Well, we really appreciate you
Yes.
doing
That
this.
was really
Yeah, it was great to talk to you guys. This was a
Yeah.
lot of fun.